I'd love to get your reaction to another theme that seems to dominate sort of our common dialogue. And it's this notion that we're living in a post-racial age because we've elected President Obama, or that we're living in a, I guess, post-gender and post-sexist world because women have been able to achieve the levels of success that you have, Miriam. What's your reaction to that? Are we really post-racial?
Yeah, I think whoever believes that needs to get off of the crack pipe. Get off of it. Give it alternative. There's no doubt that we have made magnificent progress in the face of the vicious legacy of white supremacy and the shaping of the experiment called the USA. There's no doubt about that. But simply because we're less racist doesn't mean we're post-racial. We've got magnificent younger generation who move across racial boundaries in ways that those of us who grew up under that bucket Jim Crow American aegis never conceived of. That when we formed Sativa, we didn't conceive of a black man in the White House, a White House primarily built by black slaves. We didn't think about that at all. But one thing we did recognize was that what we were willing to live for and what we were willing to die for was not just a set of successful Negroes in high places. So that we knew that no matter how high a black man or woman went, to be head of American Express, to be in the White House, to be president of Stanford, that's a beautiful thing, but that's not the fulfillment of Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. That's a fulfillment, but not the. Because the fulfillment has to do with not just piercing the top of the glass ceiling, but it's those stuck in the basement.
I think one of the things that's missing here is class, actually.
Yes.
I have to say, there was a point in time when I realized that the biggest barrier I had to my success was the class I was born into and not the color of my skin and not my gender. So it was really about poverty. Because of poverty, I didn't have certain experiences that made it easy for me to engage in certain social circles and certain academic circles, and I didn't have the background that I would need to engage in certain intellectual discussions. It wasn't my innate ability per se, but the fact that because of having arrived in the world in a particular class, I just had so little exposure to certain kinds of things.
That's right.
And I thought a lot of things were my race or my language or whatever, and later on I realized it was really my class. And as one, I got more and more exposure. You know, I went to a better chance and went to a prep school, and so then you're like inundated you're immersed in a different class experience. And that class experience gave me, people used to talk about blacks who could pass. Well, once I had a lot of experience at a certain class level, I could pass. And that's the honest truth of it for me. So I didn't find it to be personally so difficult to be a minority in a lot of ways because I could pass in the class structure, which actually was a more difficult one in some ways than just the color of my skin. So so yes, I don't think that we have gotten post-gendered or post-racial, and I certainly think we don't even talk about class that much in our culture because we don't like to even think that it actually exists and that it's a barrier and that somehow trying to deal with poverty is, it has nothing to do with our calling as Americans. And there's a certain amount of education which is about learning about each other's classes, each other's racial, linguistic, and other kinds of backgrounds, And could I say that we could actually learn to appreciate those things and to understand what gifts we can receive from people who have had those different kinds of experiences and suffering, right? That is, I think, part of what you mean when you say this love, that if we could learn to look at these differences and to actually see that those are the very things that make us who we are and that give us the ability to contribute in the world and embrace those things, I actually think we could make a big difference everywhere, in every sector.